Company Christmas party. New CEO announced we're eliminating dead weight while looking directly at me. Everyone nodded. I smiled, finished my drink, and left. My name is David. I'm 48 years old, Chief Technology Officer at Meridian Solutions, a mid-sized software consulting firm in downtown Seattle. 12 years with the company, the last 6 as CTO. I built our entire infrastructure from the ground up. Every server, every security protocol, every automated system that kept 180 employees productive and profitable. The subject line of the email had read, "Leadership Transition, All Hands Meeting." What it should have said was, "Your career is about to end, David." Brandon Walsh, our new CEO, had been hired 3 months earlier by the board of directors. 32 years old, Harvard MBA, previously a VP at a tech startup that got acquired before it could fail. The board brought him in to modernize our operations and increase shareholder value. Translation: cut costs and make the company attractive for acquisition. From day one, Brandon made it clear that he viewed the existing leadership team as obstacles to progress. "We need fresh thinking," he announced in his first all-hands meeting. "Too many people here are stuck in legacy mindsets. We're going to build a culture of innovation and agility." What Brandon didn't understand was that our legacy systems weren't legacy because they were old. They were legacy because they worked. Our client retention rate was 94%. Our system uptime was 99.7%. Our security record was spotless. We'd grown revenue 15% year over year for the past 5 years, even through the economic uncertainties of 2020 and 2021. But none of that mattered to Brandon. He saw a 48-year-old CTO making $185,000 a year and calculated that he could hire 2 junior developers for the same cost. He saw established processes and interpreted them as bureaucratic inefficiency. He saw institutional knowledge and labeled it resistance to change. The warning signs had been building for weeks. Brandon started scheduling strategic planning sessions that didn't include me. He brought in an external consultant to audit our technology infrastructure without consulting the person who designed it. He made comments in meetings about right-sizing our technical staff and eliminating redundancy in leadership roles. But it was his behavior toward Emily Chen that really showed me who Brandon was as a person. Emily was our director of marketing, 35 years old, brilliant at her job, and completely uninterested in Brandon's increasingly obvious attempts to ask her out. She'd been with the company for 3 years, joining about 6 months after I was promoted to CTO. From the beginning, there had been something special between us, a professional respect that felt like it could become something more if circumstances were different. Emily understood technology in a way that most marketing people didn't. When I explained why certain features would be technically challenging to implement, she asked the right follow-up questions. When I proposed infrastructure investments, she knew how to frame them in terms of marketing opportunities. She was the only person in leadership meetings who consistently supported IT budget requests, not because she was being polite, but because she understood their strategic value. The moment I knew I was falling for her happened about 6 weeks before the Christmas party. It was a Thursday evening around 8 p.m. Most of the office had emptied out, but I was still at my desk, working on a security patch deployment. Emily appeared in my doorway, laptop in hand, looking frustrated. "David, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but my laptop is acting weird again. The screen keeps flickering and I've got a client presentation tomorrow morning." I gestured to the chair next to my desk. "Bring it over here, let's take a look." She sat down close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. As I ran diagnostics on her machine, our hands accidentally brushed when she pointed to something on the screen. The contact lasted maybe half a second longer than it needed to. "You know," she said quietly, "I don't know what we'd do without you around here. You make everything seem so manageable." I looked up from the laptop. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I'm just doing my job, Em." "No, it's more than that. You care about getting things right. You care about the people here. That matters." For a moment, neither of us said anything. The air between us felt charged with possibility. Then my desk phone rang, the cleaning crew, asking if they could vacuum around my office. The spell broke and Emily leaned back in her chair, suddenly professional again. "Fixed," I said, closing the laptop. "Graphics driver issue should be good as new." "Thank you, really." She stood up, pausing at my office door. "David, for what it's worth, I think Brandon's an idiot if he doesn't recognize what he has in you." After she left, I sat at my desk for another 20 minutes, not working, just thinking about that conversation and what it might mean. Brandon, meanwhile, was making his interest in Emily increasingly obvious. He found excuses to stop by her office multiple times a day. He asked her to lunch under the guise of strategic marketing discussions. During team meetings, he directed most of his comments to her, often asking for her opinion on matters outside her expertise just to keep her engaged in conversation. Emily handled his attention with diplomatic skill. She was never rude, never explicitly rejecting his advances, but she was masterful at redirecting conversations back to business topics. When he suggested lunch, she countered with, "Why don't we schedule a proper meeting with the full marketing team?" When he complimented her appearance, she thanked him and immediately shifted to discussing quarterly projections. I watched this dynamic play out over several weeks, feeling increasingly protective of Emily and increasingly frustrated with Brandon's unprofessional behavior. But I also recognized that my feelings weren't entirely altruistic. I was jealous. Here was this younger, more successful man in a position of power, pursuing the woman I'd been too cautious to approach myself. The Christmas party was held at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel downtown, in their grand ballroom. The company had rented the space for 200 people, employees plus spouses and partners. It should have been a celebration of another successful year, a chance for everyone to relax and enjoy each other's company outside the office. Instead, it became the night my career at Meridian Solutions ended. I arrived alone as I had for the past several years. Emily was there with a friend from college, a tall blonde woman named Sarah who worked in public relations. They were standing near the bar, Emily wearing a deep blue dress that made her look absolutely stunning. I got myself a scotch and found a spot where I could observe the room without appearing to be hiding in the corner. Brandon arrived fashionably late, making a grand entrance with what appeared to be a professional escort. A young woman in an expensive dress who didn't seem to know anyone at the party and spent most of the evening checking her phone. His attempt to make Emily jealous was transparently obvious and, judging by Emily's complete lack of reaction, entirely unsuccessful. The first hour of the party proceeded normally. People mingled, drank, shared stories about the year's projects and successes. The catered dinner was excellent and the open bar was generous. I found myself in several pleasant conversations with colleagues I didn't often interact with outside of work contexts, but I noticed Brandon working the room with obvious purpose. He was building consensus, gauging reactions, preparing for something. Every few minutes, he would glance in my direction, then lean in close to whoever he was talking with. The conversations would pause, eyes would flick toward me, then return to Brandon with understanding nods. Around 9 p.m., Brandon called for everyone's attention. The ballroom grew quiet as people turned toward the small stage where the hotel had set up a microphone and podium. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Brandon began, his voice carrying easily through the sound system. "This has been an incredible year for Meridian Solutions. We've achieved record revenue, expanded our client base, and positioned ourselves for even greater success in the coming year." Polite applause filled the room. I clapped along, though something in Brandon's tone put me on edge. "But as we look toward the future," Brandon continued, "we need to be honest about the challenges we face. The technology industry is evolving rapidly. Our clients expect agility, innovation, and cost effectiveness. To remain competitive, we need to make some difficult decisions about our organizational structure." The applause stopped. The room was silent now, everyone sensing that this wasn't going to be the feel-good holiday speech they'd expected. Starting in January, we'll be implementing a comprehensive restructuring plan designed to eliminate redundancy and optimize our operational efficiency. This means saying goodbye to some outdated practices and, unfortunately, some outdated personnel. Brandon's eyes found mine across the room. He smiled. Not a friendly smile, but something calculated and cruel. "We're eliminating dead weight," he said, his gaze locked on me. "People who've become comfortable with the status quo, who resist change, who represent the old way of doing business. This isn't personal, it's just business. But we can't let nostalgia for the past prevent us from building the future." I felt the entire room turn to look at me. Some faces showed sympathy, others confusion, but most showed the careful neutrality of people who were already calculating how to position themselves in the new power structure. Brandon had orchestrated this moment perfectly, using the Christmas party to publicly signal my termination, while making it seem like a natural business decision. Emily was staring at Brandon with undisguised disgust. She started to step forward, probably to say something in my defense, but I caught her eye and gave a subtle shake of my head. This wasn't the time or place for her to put her own job at risk. I finished my scotch in one long swallow, set the empty glass on a nearby table, and walked calmly toward the exit. The crowd parted as I moved through the room, conversations resuming in hushed tones behind me. I heard Brandon's voice continuing his speech, something about exciting opportunities and fresh perspectives. But I was already focused on the logistics of what came next. The hotel lobby was decorated for Christmas. Massive tree, garland, the works. I was getting my coat from the valet when I heard heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor behind me. "David, wait." I turned to find Emily hurrying toward me, her friend Sarah a few steps behind. Emily's face was flushed with anger and something else. Concern, maybe affection. "I can't believe he did that," she said, slightly out of breath. "In front of everyone at the Christmas party. It was cruel and unprofessional and—" "It was smart," I interrupted. "Brandon's not stupid, Em. He wanted to send a message to the entire company about what happens to people who don't align with his vision. Using the Christmas party maximized the audience and the emotional impact." "You can't be okay with this." "I'm not okay with it, but I'm not surprised by it either. I've been expecting something like this for weeks." Emily glanced back toward the ballroom, then stepped closer to me. "David, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been wanting to say for a while now." Before I could respond, she reached up and kissed me. It wasn't a consolation kiss or a sympathy gesture. It was the kind of kiss that communicated years of unspoken feelings and missed opportunities. When we separated, she was smiling despite the tears in her eyes. "I've wanted to do that for 3 years," she said, "but I didn't think it was appropriate while we worked together. Now that you're leaving..." Above us, hanging from the hotel's chandelier, was a sprig of mistletoe. Sarah pointed it out with a grin. "Well, that makes it official." I looked at Emily, this amazing woman who had just turned the worst professional moment of my life into something unexpectedly wonderful. I need you to know that I'm probably about to have a very difficult few months. No job, no income, starting over at 48. I don't know what comes next." "I don't care about any of that," she said firmly. "I care about you. The real you, not your job title or your salary. I've watched you handle every crisis, solve every problem, take care of everyone around you. I know exactly who you are, David." We stood there in the hotel lobby holding hands under the mistletoe while the sounds of the Christmas party continued in the ballroom behind us. It felt like the end of one chapter and the beginning of something completely different. "There's one more thing," Emily said. "I might be able to help you with your next move. My college roommate Jessica started a boutique consulting firm about 2 years ago. She's been looking for someone with your exact skill set to help design a custom software platform. It's not a permanent position, but it could be a good way to get started. You do that for me? I'd do anything for you. Besides, I might not be at Meridian much longer myself. Brandon's been making my job increasingly difficult, especially since I've been unresponsive to his personal interest." 3 days later, I was sitting in Jessica Morrison's conference room in Pioneer Square, discussing the technical requirements for a project management platform she wanted to build for small consulting firms. The contract was worth $85,000, almost exactly what I'd received as severance from Meridian Solutions. Jessica was impressive. Stanford MBA, former McKinsey consultant, the kind of sharp strategic thinker who understood both the business and technical sides of software development. "Emily speaks very highly of your work," she said during our initial meeting. "She said you're the kind of person who builds systems that actually work, not just systems that look good in PowerPoint presentations." "That's a fair assessment," I replied. "I'm more interested in sustainability than flash." "Perfect. Because what I need is sustainable. I want to build something that can scale with my business over the next 5 years, not something I'll need to rebuild every 18 months. We spent 3 hours going through technical specifications, discussing architecture decisions, and outlining project timelines. By the end of the meeting, I had a clear picture of what Jessica needed and how I could deliver it. More importantly, I had a sense of what it would be like to work with a client who actually valued technical expertise. "One more thing," Jessica said as we were wrapping up. "If this project goes well, I'd be interested in discussing a longer-term arrangement. I've been thinking about expanding into custom software development as a service offering, but I'd need a technical partner who could handle the complex implementations." I signed the contract that afternoon. That evening, Emily came over to my apartment in Belltown to celebrate. We opened a bottle of wine and sat on my couch, talking about the future for the first time since the Christmas party. I'm thinking about giving Brandon my notice, she said. The environment there is becoming toxic, and I don't want to work for someone who treats people the way he treated you. Don't make any hasty decisions because of me, I said. You've got a good job, good benefits, a career track. I've got a good job with a terrible boss at a company that's about to lose half its institutional knowledge. Emily paused, swirling her wine. Besides, Jessica's firm is growing fast. She might need a marketing director soon. Over the next 2 weeks, while I was getting started on Jessica's project, the situation at Meridian Solutions deteriorated rapidly. Emily kept me updated on the chaos that was unfolding in my absence. The first problem emerged on January 2nd, when about half the staff couldn't log into their workstations. Our company used a custom authentication system that I'd built, which required quarterly password updates and security certificate renewals. The process was automated, but it required manual approval from the CTO account, my account, which had been deactivated when I was terminated. Brandon called me directly that morning. David, we need you to come in and fix this login issue. It's preventing people from working. I'm afraid I can't do that, Brandon. My employment was terminated, and my system access was revoked. You'll need to have your new IT team handle it. We don't have a new IT team yet. The passwords are locked behind some system you set up. That's the security protocol we discussed implementing 18 months ago. All administrative functions require dual authentication to prevent unauthorized access. Your HR department should have documentation of the process. Can you just walk us through it over the phone? I'm not comfortable providing technical support without a proper consulting agreement and liability insurance. If you need emergency IT assistance, I'm available at $400 per hour, minimum 4-hour engagement. Brandon hung up on me. The login problem persisted for 3 days, during which approximately 90 employees couldn't access their primary work systems. The temporary solution, implemented by the external consultant Brandon had hired, involved creating new user accounts for everyone, which meant that 2 years' worth of personalized settings, saved files, and workflow configurations were lost. The second crisis hit the following week. Our automated backup system started failing, but nobody realized it until a server crash on January 12th resulted in the loss of 3 days' worth of client work. The backup system required weekly verification checks that I'd always performed personally, usually on Sunday mornings from home. Without those checks, the system had gradually degraded until it was backing up corrupted data. This time, Patricia Williams, our CFO, called me. David, I know things ended poorly with Brandon, but we need your help. We're looking at potential liability issues if we can't recover this client data. I understand the situation, Patricia. If you'd like me to consult on data recovery, I can do that at my standard emergency rate. What's your emergency rate? $500 per hour, minimum 8-hour engagement, payment in advance. $500 an hour? David, that's ridiculous. That's my rate for working with former employers who terminated me without cause. If you'd prefer to use someone else, I can recommend several firms that specialize in data recovery. They ended up hiring a specialist from San Francisco who charged $12,000 to recover most of the lost data. The process took 4 days, during which the affected client accounts were essentially on hold. The third crisis was the most serious. In late January, our primary client portal started experiencing intermittent outages. The portal handled account management for about 60% of our clients, representing roughly $3.2 million in annual revenue. The outages were brief but frequent, 5 to 10 minutes of downtime several times per day. The consultant Brandon had hired couldn't identify the root cause. The system logs were complex, and the architecture included several custom modules that I'd developed to integrate with specific client requirements. After 2 weeks of failed troubleshooting attempts, the consultant recommended rebuilding the entire portal from scratch, a project he estimated would take 6 to 8 months and cost approximately $400,000. By this point, Emily had submitted her resignation and was scheduled to start working with Jessica's firm in March. She'd become my unofficial source of intelligence about the deteriorating situation at Meridian. Brandon's getting desperate, she told me over dinner at Canlis, celebrating the completion of my first project for Jessica. 3 major clients have threatened to terminate their contracts if the portal issues aren't resolved soon. The board is asking hard questions about his decision-making. What's he saying about the technical problems? He's claiming that you sabotaged the systems before you left. He told the board that you deliberately made the infrastructure fragile to force them to keep you employed. I almost choked on my wine. That's completely absurd. Every system I built followed industry best practices for security and redundancy. The problems they're having are entirely predictable consequences of removing the person who understood how everything worked. I know that. Jessica knows that. Anyone with technical knowledge knows that, but Brandon is telling a different story to save his own reputation. Let him. The truth has a way of coming out. The truth came out 3 weeks later when Meridian's largest client, Pacific Northwest Insurance, terminated their contract. The portal outages had caused billing errors that cost P&I approximately $50,000 in processing delays. Their IT director, someone I'd worked with closely during the initial implementation, explicitly stated that the problem stemmed from inadequate technical leadership and poor system maintenance. Within 48 hours of the P&I termination, 2 other major clients announced they were reviewing their relationships with Meridian. The company's stock price, which had risen 8% following Brandon's appointment, dropped 23% in a single trading session. Jessica's project was going exceptionally well. The platform I designed was elegant, scalable, and exactly suited to her business needs. More importantly, working with Jessica reminded me why I'd gotten into technology in the first place. The satisfaction of building something that solved real problems and made people's work more efficient. I've been thinking about your idea for expanding into custom software development, I told Jessica during our weekly project review meeting. I'd be interested in discussing a partnership arrangement. What kind of partnership? I provide the technical expertise and project management. You handle business development and client relationships. We split revenue based on contribution to each project. Jessica smiled. I was hoping you'd suggest something like that. I've already had 3 inquiries from companies that need custom solutions. Word is getting around that we know what we're doing. One of those inquiries came from someone unexpected. Mark Chen, Emily's brother, who ran a small manufacturing company in Tacoma. He needed an inventory management system that could integrate with his existing accounting software. Emily mentioned that you might be able to help us, Mark said during our initial consultation. We've been using spreadsheets and QuickBooks, but we're growing fast enough that we need something more sophisticated. The project was smaller than what I'd been working on with Jessica, but it was exactly the kind of challenge I enjoyed, taking a manual process and turning it into an efficient, automated system. Mark's requirements were clearly defined, his budget was reasonable, and his timeline was realistic. More importantly, working on Mark's project gave me additional opportunities to spend time with Emily. She often came along to our meetings, ostensibly to help with requirements gathering, but really because we were inseparable by that point. Our relationship had developed quickly after the Christmas party. The artificial constraints of workplace propriety were gone, and we discovered that our professional compatibility translated seamlessly into personal compatibility. Emily was smart, funny, ambitious, and completely supportive of my decision to start freelancing, rather than looking for another corporate position. You're happier now than I ever saw you at Meridian, she observed one evening as we were cooking dinner together in her kitchen. Even with all the uncertainty, you seem more yourself. I am happier. I'm building things I actually care about, working with people who respect what I do. And I'm with you, which makes everything else seem manageable. By March, my freelance practice was generating enough revenue to cover my expenses comfortably. Jessica had introduced me to 2 additional clients, and Mark had referred me to 3 other manufacturing companies that needed similar solutions. Emily had officially started working with Jessica's firm, and their collaboration was already producing impressive results. But the most satisfying development was watching the continued deterioration of Brandon's position at Meridian Solutions. The company's Q1 financial results were disastrous. Revenue was down 18% compared to the previous quarter, primarily due to client losses and project delays. The consultant Brandon had hired to rebuild the client portal had exceeded his original timeline by 6 weeks and his budget by $75,000, and the new system still wasn't functional. In April, 2 of Meridian's most senior developers submitted their resignations. Both cited lack of technical leadership and unclear strategic direction as reasons for leaving. One of them, Sarah Kim, who'd been with the company for 7 years, called me to ask about freelance opportunities. The place is falling apart, Sarah told me during our coffee meeting in Capitol Hill. Brandon keeps hiring consultants instead of rebuilding the internal technical team. Everyone who actually knows how to do the work is either gone or looking for new jobs. What would you want to do if you went freelance? Honestly, I'd love to work with you and Jessica. Emily's been telling everyone how much she enjoys the culture there. It sounds like the kind of environment where people actually get to do good work. I introduced Sarah to Jessica the following week. Within a month, she'd signed on as our first full-time developer, giving us the capacity to take on larger, more complex projects. The final chapter of the Meridian story came in late May. Brandon was terminated by the board of directors following a quarterly review that revealed the full extent of the company's technical and financial problems. His replacement was Patricia Williams, the CFO who'd been with the company for 12 years and understood the value of institutional knowledge. Patricia's first major decision was to offer me a consulting contract to help rebuild their IT infrastructure. Her second decision was to try to hire back Emily as director of marketing. I took the consulting contract at $350 per hour, which was still less than my emergency rate but fair compensation for complex technical work. Emily declined the job offer. "I appreciate the opportunity," Emily told Patricia during their meeting, "but I'm really happy where I am. Jessica's firm is growing fast and we're building something special." What we were building was indeed special. By the end of 2022, our partnership, now formalized as Morrison Reed Consulting, had grown to 8 employees and was generating over $2 million in annual revenue. We specialized in custom software solutions for small and medium-sized businesses, exactly the market segment that larger consulting firms often ignored. Emily and I were married in September 2023 at a small ceremony in the San Juan Islands. Jessica was Emily's maid of honor, and Mark was my best man. The guest list included most of our team at Morrison Reed, along with several clients who had become genuine friends. Our honeymoon was a 2-week trip to Japan, where we visited Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. Emily had always wanted to see the cherry blossoms, and I was fascinated by the country's approach to blending traditional craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. We spent hours in small workshops watching artisans who had perfected their skills over decades, creating beautiful and functional objects with patience and precision. "This is what I want our company to be like," Emily said as we watched a master carpenter fitting joints without using a single nail. Taking the time to do things right, building something that lasts, caring about craftsmanship as much as efficiency. When we returned from Japan, we found that 3 more employees from Meridian Solutions had applied to join our team, including Tom Rodriguez, the senior developer who'd been with the company for 9 years. The exodus wasn't coordinated. People were simply recognizing that Meridian's culture had fundamentally changed, and they wanted to work somewhere that valued their expertise. "It's not about revenge," I told Emily as we reviewed Tom's application. "It's about people wanting to do good work in an environment where their contributions are appreciated." "I know, but it's still satisfying to see that talent recognizes talent." We hired Tom, along with Lisa Park, a project manager who'd been frustrated by Meridian's increasingly chaotic workflow processes. By early 2024, our team included 6 former Meridian employees, plus 4 new hires who brought expertise in areas we hadn't previously covered. Morrison Reed Consulting was becoming exactly what Emily and I had envisioned: a place where technical excellence was valued, where employees were treated as professionals rather than resources, and where client relationships were built on mutual respect and clear communication. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, and it wasn't the result of any grand plan. It was simply the natural consequence of treating people well, doing excellent work, and building systems that actually solved problems. The same principles I'd always followed, but now in an environment where they were appreciated rather than taken for granted. On the first anniversary of that disastrous Christmas party, Emily and I threw our own celebration for the Morrison Reed team. We rented a private room at the same hotel where Brandon had announced his dead weight strategy, and we toasted to the power of building something meaningful. "A year ago," I said during my brief speech to the group, "I thought my career was ending. Instead, it was just beginning. The best thing that ever happened to me was being fired from a job where my work wasn't valued, because it led me to all of you and to the opportunity to build something we can all be proud of." Emily squeezed my hand under the table. Around us, our team, our friends, raised their glasses in appreciation. Outside, Seattle was covered in Christmas lights, the same city where I'd once thought my professional life was over. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a much better one. Subscribe if you agree.